Namaskar and very good afternoon listeners. Today I, Dr. Renu Tomar, has come to discuss understanding childhood from educational perspective. So learner, today in the series of lecture on understanding childhood educational perspective, we shall be trying to understand psychological perspective, that is educational psychological perspective, as well as sociological perspective. Friends, as far as childhood is concerned, the development of childhood is concerned, lot of concepts have been given by various psychologists. Childhood has also been studied by various sociologists across cultures and societies as to understand that what construct and reconstruct their lives. In fact, we will also try to unravel today how the diversity, differences or marginalization has an impact on childhood, and we will also try to understand that how childhood is affected due to different circumstances like war, conflict, poverty, slums, or due to the gender differences also, and due to the racial as well as differences owing to the caste. So friends, now taking the journey of learning as to understand childhood, I, Dr. Renu Tomar, welcome you back. Friends, as far as childhood is concerned, various theorists have given very many theories regarding childhood. One of the important theory which all of us know is psychosexual theory, which was given by Freud. Apart from that, various behaviorists have also given many theories regarding childhood. In fact, the psychological development has also been unraveled by quite many psychologists as to understand its domain, as to understand that how it is to be read. In fact, social learning theories have also been given. There are theories in context of socio-cultural as well as cognitive development. We will try to understand education from the perspective of different educationists, psychologists and sociologists, the childhood, the phenomena called childhood. Now let us begin with how Freud's dealt with the childhood. As far as Freud is concerned, he gave psychoanalytic theory, which was given by Sigmund Freud, as everybody knows it, and it was based upon the clinical work with patients who were suffering from mental illness. Freud came to believe that childhood experiences are a result of unconscious desire which influence behavior. According to Freud, the conflicts that occur at different stages have lifelong influences on personality and development. If we look childhood from the perspective of Freud, then we will understand that as far as psychosexual development theory is concerned, the childhood development occurs in series of stages, number one. Then, if some stage has problem, the child encounters some problem at certain stage, then that leads to fixation, and that fixation usually result in the problem as the child grows up. So this is something which Freud has suggested when he talked about the energy of libido. In fact, his theory was basically revolving around energy of libido. It was focused on different erogenous ions at specific stages, and failure to progress through the stages was due to the fixation which had developed at certain points when the child was developing, as the Freud believed that adult behavior is influenced by the fixation which has result at certain point in development. So what happens as the children complete each stage, and what might result if the child does poorly during a particular stage in the development. So this is something which was the perspective of Freud. In fact, he understood childhood as stage wise progression. He understood childhood as if there is a failure to resolve the conflict, then that is influencing adult behavior. he understood the child development as personality development and which changes and grow over the entire life. Freud believed that the stages played a very important role in shaping development, and personality is generally set in stone by the age of 5. Now let us talk about Eriksson. Why do we need to talk about Eriksson? Freud did have acceptance to we would say that there were many researchers who believed in the theory of Freud, but there were many who did not agree with the theory of Freud. The reason was, as we discussed, that Freud theory was basically about the libido, and it was more psychosexual. So in contrast to the Freud, there was a researcher, the scientist Eriksson, who gave psychosocial development theory. Eriksson is important particularly from the perspective of educational psychologists, or we can say the development of childhood, because he has divided the human life in different growth stages as well as changes which occurs throughout the life. In fact, he has focused on social interaction and conflicts which arises during different stages of development. If we understand child development from the perspective of Eriksson, then we would say that Eriksson theory of psychosocial development shared certain similarities with Freud, but it is dramatically different in different ways, because Eriksson was not focusing on sexual interest like Freud. Eriksson saw that sex was not a driving force in development as the Freud considered it. Eriksson believed that social interaction and experience played decisive role. His 8-stage theory of human development describes the process from infancy to death, and during each stage people are faced with the developmental conflicts that impact later functioning and further growth. Unlike many other developmental theories, Eriksson's psychosocial theory focuses on development across the entire lifespan. In fact, what he understood was that successfully managing the challenges at each stage leads to the emergence of a lifelong psychological virtue. If we have a look at the stages which were propagated by Eriksson, the first stage was trust versus mistrust. This, as the stage 1, was basically followed at a tender stage at which the child was compelled to trust the people around him for feeding, for other different needs. And if the child fails to trust, that has an impact on his life throughout the life. The second stage, which was pointed out by Eriksson, was autonomy versus shame and doubt. Third was initiative versus guilt. Fourth stage was industry versus inferiority. Stage 5 is identity versus confusion. Stage 6 is intimacy versus isolation, and stage 7 is generativity versus stagnation, and stage 8 is integrated versus despair. We will be dealing with each stage one by one. As far as stage 1 is concerned, which is the very early stage, as we have discussed that the first stage is trust versus mistrust, and in this first stage it is the age group is birth and 1 year of age, and it is most fundamental stage in life because an infant is utterly dependent upon others as far as his development is concerned. And at this stage, if the individual feels that he is not getting the kind of a strength which an individual needs, then that has an impact throughout the life. What does the child need at this stage? The child needs food, the child needs love, the child needs warmth, the child needs safety, and the child needs nurturing. So, in this case, if a caregiver, and which is usually the mother, fails to provide adequate care and love, the child will come to feel that they cannot trust or depend upon the adults in their life. So friends, this was the first stage which was pointed out by Eriksson. if we have a look at the Eriksson socio-psychological development theory, we find that each stage is followed by the other stage, and infancy is followed by early childhood. And what was the second stage which Eriksson has pointed out? The second stage of Eriksson which was pointed out was autonomy versus shame and doubt. Autonomy versus shame and doubt, as the stage itself states, it is the age when a child is trying to become independent. Independent in a way that child wants to learn walking, the child wants to learn sitting, and these are the basic action which the child is trying to make on his own or on her own. And he is also trying to make simple decisions about what they prefer, like the colors, the food, the person. So that is the stage at which, if the child is growing at a appropriate level, if you would say that the child is learning things as per his age, and if he is getting the choices and he is provided the control by the parents and caregivers, then child will develop a sense of autonomy. If it is not being done, then naturally what will the child feel? The child will feel shame, and he or she will end up doubting one's own strength, one's own control, one's own humanity. What are the other things which are most important? The most important stage, the most important act in this stage is potty training, and this is something which children need to develop, because that is something which provides them sense of personal control over physical skill and a sense of independence. Friends, this is an important point, because usually now the parents overlook this kind of a thing, and they go for the other artificial means as far as the potty is concerned, rather than providing the potty training to the children. So it is one of the most important activity which a child should learn, and once a child learns how to control over the physical skill, and he feels sense of independence that he or she can state when he is hungry or when he desires to have potty, then the child feels that yes, just like adults, he has control over his body. So this is, the toilet training is very important part of this process as far as Eriksson is concerned. In fact, if we differentiate the Eriksson and Freud, we would understand that Eriksson believed that learning to control one's bodily function leads to the feeling of control and sense of independence. But this was not the case with Freud, who believes that the unconscious or subconscious played much more dominating role than the conscious level. In fact, the other important activities, if we talk from the point of view of Eriksson, would be the control over food choices, the control over toys, the control over colors, the control over clothing, even the control over the people, is something which the child should be able to gain at this stage. The stage 3, which is a preschool years, this is initiative versus guilt. As far as Eriksson's understanding is concerned, he understood that at this point, psychosocial development requires children to begin to assert their power and control over the world through directing plays and social interaction. So friends, we usually have come across when the children who are in the age group of 2, 3, and if they are allowed to play amongst each other, you will find that the children will select their role and they will try to direct the things on their own. May it be the directing a pet, or may it be directing just the television or a computer, or may it be directing their own peers. And if the children are successful at this stage and they feel capable, that they are capable of leading others, then they are much more satisfied as far as this stage is concerned, because those who fail to acquire these skills are left with a sense of guilt or self-doubt and lack of initiative. So this stage, that is the preschool year, it is very important that the children should be successful and they should be feeling capable and able as far as leading others is concerned. And who would be others? In case others can be the adults as well as adults can be kids around them. The stage 5 as far as Eriksson is concerned is industry versus inferiority. This is the age group 5 to 11, and this is the early school years. And at this point, through social interaction, the child begins to develop a sense of pride in their accomplishment and abilities, and they need to cope with new social and academic demands. Success at this point leads to sense of competence, whereas failure results in feeling of inferiority. So, as adults, what is our role as to make them successfully cross this particular stage? Our role is to provide a stage to each child as far as his accomplishment is concerned. Social and academic demands have to be decided for each child differently. So, the child who is not good at mathematics may be a good orator. So, accordingly, as a teacher, we should be providing a platform to the child so that the child can feel that he does have a competence and he is capable of controlling himself as well as the people around through social interaction. And only then the child will be able to develop pride in their accomplishment. Similarly, there would be children who may not be good in academics at all, may it be the mathematical portion, may it be the reading portion, or may it be the oratorship. Then we have to make them feel pride by functioning in the sphere in which they would be able to accomplish. And they have to be taught that the accomplishment is not in comparison to the others around them. Rather, accomplishment is to be read in the context of their own achievement and their own abilities. So, a child who may not be very good at orating or poems, or who may not be good at mathematics, he or she may be good as far as running is concerned. So, the child should be allowed to have sense of pride in accomplishing and proving himself in those activities. Stage 5 as given by Eriksson is identity versus confusion. What does that mean? It means that the child, when he grows into an adolescent, he or she wants to have a sense of self. And because the child is centered at developing a sense of self and explore one's own independence, then he needs to be reinforced through personal exploration. What will be the role of parents or teacher? The role of parents and teacher will be either to just become friends in such a manner that they are not actively involved in their life. They should be passively involved in their life, and the children should be left to allow and to consider personal exploration so that they can emerge from this stage with the strong sense of self and feeling of independence and control. And those who are not sure of their beliefs, in fact they are unsure of their beliefs and desire, throughout their life they will feel insecure and confused about themselves and the future. So at this stage it is very important that each child at the stage of adolescent is allowed to experiment and explore one's own strength and one's own peer group and develop a sense of self, because usually when the child is exploring one's independence and he or she is seeking to develop a sense of self, that can be sought by the child only in his age group, that is amongst his own peers. So here, so that the child doesn't remain confused, as adults it's our responsibility to provide them ample opportunity. Along with that, it is also our responsibility that we encourage them and reinforce through personal exploration. As far as this stage is concerned, we also need to understand that identity of the child what does identity of the child is concerned, if we try to understand what is identity from the Eriksson point of view, then we understand that our identity means beliefs, ideals and values that shape and guide a person's behavior. Let me repeat. Here, when we are talking in the context of identity, that is at stage 5, when the child is exploring for one's own identity, when the child is seeking one's own identity, how the identity has to be understood. The identity has to be understood as being referring to the beliefs, ideals and values that help shape and guide a person's behavior. So, these are the aspects and on which generally socio-psychologists and psychologists focus at when they talk about identity. In fact, when we talk about this stage, we have to understand that if the person is able to complete this stage successfully, then the fidelity comes up. When the Eriksson described the ability to live by society's standards and expectation, Eriksson placed a particular emphasis on the development of ego identity. What does ego identity means? Ego identity is the conscious sense of self that we develop through social interaction and becomes a central focus during the identity versus confusion stage of psychosocial development. It means that it is the conscious sense of self. So, ego is not to be understood in the way as we usually say in English, that ego means the person is egoist, means the person is very much proud. No, ego is to be understood from the psychological aspect as the ego, superego, etc. So, ego identity from the Eriksson point of view is the conscious sense of self that we develop through social interaction and thus becomes a central focus during the identity versus confusion stage of psychosocial development. So, ego identity constantly changes due to new experiences and information that we acquire in our daily interaction with others. And as we have new experiences, we also take on challenges that help or hinder the development of the individual. The sixth stage is intimacy versus isolation. At this stage, the young adults needs to form intimate behavior, loving relationship with each other, and successes usually lead to strong relationship, while failures result in loneliness and isolation. Friends, this is a very important stage as far as forming the strength to form the relationship and retain the relationship is concerned. It is to be understood from the perspective that the children, the boys and young boys and girls who had many stable relationship during this age group, that is the early adulthood group, they are able to have strong relationship in their life ahead, because this stage covers the period of early adulthood, and at this point the boys and girls, young boys and girls are exploring personal relationship, and Eriksson believed that it was very vital for developing committed relationship with others and to have relationship which is close as well as which is enduring and secure. So friends, at this stage it is very important that the kids are promoted by the adults to interact with different sexes, that is opposite sexes, so that they understand, the understanding between the different sexes can be understood by them easily, and they understand that what are the expectation of the other sexes, and accordingly they can understand that what results in stable relationship, because only then after they have explored the relationships they would be able to understand that what is required for a relationship to be maintained. Then there was stage 4, which was generativity versus stagnation. In this is the age group when the children are creating a positive changes that benefit other people. They are the adults, they at this point, generally the success is very important to the children, and for this it is responsibility of the adults to create and nurture things that outlast them. Because if the children fail to achieve in this stage, then they would be feeling problem throughout the life. While failure results in shallow involvement in the world, and accomplishment results in feeling useful in the world. So during adulthood, we continue to build our lives focusing on our career and family, because this is the age at which the adults are trying to build their lives and they are focusing on their career and family. And those who are successful during this phase will feel that they are contributing to the world by being active in their home and community, while those who fail to attain this skill will feel unproductive and uninvolved in the world. Care is the virtue achieved when this stage is handled successfully. So friend, at this stage the person should feel proud of one's own accomplishment and should be able to watch one's own children grow into the adults and develop a sense of unity with their life partner. These are the two important aspects for feeling satisfied at this stage. Another stage, stage 8, we shall be discussing in the second part of the lecture. So friend, at this note, I, Dr. Renu Tomar, take your leave to join you soon back again in the part 2 of the series of lecture in understanding children from the educational perspective. Namaskar. Have a good day. Thank you.